A big hello to our viewers out there. Welcome back to Everything Boarding School. For first-time viewers, Everything Boarding School is a community outreach effort to bring the good news of boarding education to all parts of Asia. I'm your host, Daniel Sito. I'm an education consultant and founder and head of Sesame Education. We're conducting our interview from Singapore, and the topic of the day is how I decided to send my son to an American boarding school. We're so delighted to have with us Miss Tina Peng, the mother of a former student of mine, Brian Yuan. Tina, welcome. Thank you for coming to spend time with us today. Would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Hey, thank you, Uncle Daniel. Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Peng. I'm Chinese and grew up in China. Currently, I'm working for American company as HR VP. I have a global job. So you know that because of my job, I work as HR and interview and meet a lot of people. That also shaped my thinking about how I want to raise my child and what kind of the system work best for my son. It's pretty interesting actually when you're working for global companies and understand how different the Western, Eastern, and the different system which will shape a kid very differently in his growth.
Yes, indeed. Would you like, to share a little bit about Brian's background? Maybe, his family background, cultural background, or, educational background, from, his, childhood all the way to now.
Of course. So Brian is born in China. His father and I both are Chinese. We both have, because maybe we're both working for the multinational companies, especially American companies, we both have an idea. We feel like US education system is something we want to pursue when he was a baby. So we started to kind of develop him from his English language capability and send him to bilingual kindergarten, then follow up with bilingual private school in primary school as well. So Brian spent his childhood in China and the whole 6 years primary school in China in a private school, which is one of a pretty good school in Shanghai. Then around grade 7, he moved to Singapore. Partially because of my job, I moved to Singapore earlier when he was grade 3. We has been looking for opportunity when it's a good time for Brian to move to Singapore as well. So we think that it's important for him to learn Chinese as a Chinese. So it's important for him to spend time in China in primary school. In the middle school, due to some family decisions, and that was the moment we feel like it's good time for him to move to Singapore. So Brian followed me to Singapore 2 years ago, and we joined a British school, which actually is interesting for Brian to really feel whether that's good for him. Somehow, due to multiple reasons, that was also COVID time, Brian does not feel it's his school. So when Singapore American School gave us an offer, so we decided to join Singapore American School, and he seems happy since then.
Wow, so Brian had his formative education or elementary education in China in a more conventional setting, and then moved on to an international setting when he moved to Singapore grade 7. And now Brian is moving to study boarding education for his high school years. So my question is, Brian is already enjoying or has already been enjoying American curriculum at Singapore American School. So what extras do you see in an American boarding school that would convince you and Brian that studying overseas over there at a boarding setting is the right thing to do?
First, the plan to move him to Singapore is also kind of a transitional step. We do have our assumptions. Feel like a boarding school in US for Brian will be more suitable. But we also want to not test one step, because that's a big risk. And put him into Singapore American School, that's a kind of a step to see if he is suitable for American system, because Singapore American School, basically like American school, the big difference is not boarding experience as a day school. So that part, we feel good about it, and somehow the transition from China, really different system, to Singapore American school, I think Brian did very well. Partially due to his language ability, was able to make him kind of like a catch up. Actually, he did good enough in the school as well. A big difference, of course, is the boarding experience. So we do think, and later we can talk about that, boarding experience, we feel like it would be great for Brian as a boy, especially a boy, to grow up independently, with to pursue his own thinking and to motivate himself because he wants to, rather than, very Chinese system we as a parent want kids to do. So that's contribute us to started to pursue the U.S. boarding system. We actually started exploring the U.S. boarding school before Brian moved to Singapore. We can talk about that later, but that's, we have a plan and we're trying to keep testing our assumptions during his experience, then see we should continue move forward. And in the end, at least today, we did.
In your testing of your assumptions, I would imagine you must be doing some homework of some sort, like a research. How did you research on these American boarding schools? Do you get to visit any of them? But more importantly, how did you eventually test whether Brian would be happy studying in them?
Yeah, it is a complicated question, actually. I think I would say that summarize into 3 parts. First, I think partially the boarding school kind of ambition is also due to some influence of the people I know. I know some great mothers who has elder kids. I talk to them, I learn from them, I learn from the experience. I like to learn from others, in addition to learn from the books as well. So those kind of experience, I see how the kids turn out before and after a boarding school experience. I see that's what I want to pursue and what we want to pursue for our son Brian as well. Secondly, I learned a lot of the U.S. boarding schools through the counselors. So before Brian moved to Singapore, we already did rounds of conversation with different counselors. I do feel like one of very important things of the whole process is you need to find a counselor you and mostly is your child can trust and can have a good chemistry and feel like the counselor really focus on to grow your child versus pursue a school. And very luckily, I want to say that due to my network, due to my friend, we got to know Uncle Daniel and we learned a lot school from Uncle Daniel.
Thank you for your kind words, Tina. Appreciate that. In terms of you eventually making that decision to really apply, right? That is like a major decision, not only for Brian, but especially for parents, but especially for mothers. How did you make that decision, and what were some of the emotional maybe struggles or wrestling that you had made in your mind before you made that decision?
I believe a ratio called 80-20. So all the way I trying to assess and test the things, 80% we feel right and 20% is a risk and we need to take and continue. So for whole decision process of Brian, I think most importantly to me is if this school can help him to be a better self and help him to feel comfortable, but also challenged enough, but not overwhelming. So we have been kind of list down our criteria, what's most importantly for Brian. Very important is every child is different. So the personality is different, the preference is different, the strengths and the weakness is also different as well. So we choose what suitable for Brian. For example, we think we want a good boarding experience, so we pursue the high boarding rate. And we also think Brian's personality-wise is not that kind of aggressive as some of the others. So we prefer the school size is middle or maybe a little small, which have a more cohesive, kind of more harmony. We focus a lot on the culture. Certainly, academic is foundation, but the culture, including the manner, what's going to turn Brian into as a person, that kind of the elements does impact when we select the school. But okay, if you ask also about what's the decision to really confirm Brian should go to a school, I think there are a few parts of that. One big part is due to the summer school. During the process, Brian went to Exeter for 5 weeks summer program. We decided to do that also because I see that's a very good time to test how he feels about that and how I feel about that too as a mother. So very interesting. Of course, that was emotional. Even summer school, that was emotional for a mother. I remember how the time I feel about that when I dropped Brian to continue my business trip. Well, that was emotional. But good thing is Brian really liked it. Just after a week, we talk every day during his 5 weeks. But after a week, Brian already called me and said, I don't need to go back to Singapore. I like here. I think I belong here. I'm very happy about that. It's not only, okay, maybe some parents think it's just about freedom they have. I think actually Brian got to know a great kid as well. One of the friend he makes through that etc. program is a very good kid, which also helped him to think about who I want to be, what I can learn from those friends. He met great people and great teachers. So that 5 weeks experience of summer school is, I should say, play a very important role for us to think, okay, he can do it. And he certainly come back with more confidence and with more ideas about why US boarding school is a good thing, and more convinced this is something he wants to pursue versus he knows that's something my parents, my mother thinks a good thing to do.
That's so good. And I can see that, Tina, you're very systematic, and that you would be very thorough with your assumptions, and you would, test your assumptions step by step along the way to make sure that this is indeed the right path for both Brian and also for the family as a whole. This is really a good reference for many of our viewers that, the process, while it can be emotional in nature, it can be handled in a fairly systematic, objective way to help every stakeholder, be it parents or child himself, to figure out whether this is the right decision to make collectively.
Yeah, I don't make it like I'm only think, I don't feel. Actually, I do feel, especially when the time approach. I was very emotional when when I signed the contract of the Episcopal High School. And I have been asking by my friends, colleagues, how do you feel? I think my answer is I'm building my strengths to be fully prepared. I don't think I will be ever fully prepared just to walk away, but in the end is what do you want your child to be? And I do believe the boarding school in US would be great experience for him. So as a mother, I should support him to grow. So have to use my brain to conquer my feeling to move forward. It's hard. I want to tell all the audience it's hard. Again, 80-20. The 80% of me feel like this is the right thing to do. Let's just do it and figure out how to deal with the 20%.
Yes, indeed. Part of your 80, comes from your research, and part of your research comes from you were there. So Brian was there during the summer school at Exeter, and you guys were also there to visit the campuses. And can you share a little bit about when you were there visiting the campuses? How do those boarding schools look to you? I mean, what are the things that are common among them? But also, what are the things that you feel would set each of them apart so that, not all boarding schools are created equal, so to speak. They are different. They all have their unique personality, so to speak. So how do you figure that out?
First, we went to US twice in 1 year during the application season, basically at least I found that a very valuable experience because especially for Brian as a child, at 13 years old at that time, now he's 14 years old, he only know what it is when he see it and feel it. The schools are very different. Although they are all very good schools, they're different from, first, they are common about they're all very good school, have a lot of resource. You will see facilities are good, curriculums are good. You will see a lot of, great stories about how the kids grow up. But the big difference is you will only feel the difference when you're in the campus to feel how the school culture is. When you interact with a mission team, when you interact with the tour guides, when you even walk in the campus to see how the kids interact, if they smile, they talk, how they feel is different. For me, we think to find a suitable school, especially just think about the kids going to live on his own in a campus. So how the people around him, how the school system kind of like is more warm, like a family, or everyone know everyone. We visit few schools, people like a big family, 300-400 people, students campus. And we also visit some schools. You will feel a little different. There's one school I can tell you, Brian was kind of Brian can get admitted in a very good school, but Brian just so clear he does not want to go there because feel like rigid and feel people are distant as well. So certainly I respect and I care a lot of how my son feel about things. So we put that's one of the priorities as well. I think that's a big difference. Is people, is environment and culture.
After your tours of all the schools, in your mind, how do you draw the connection between which school would be most suitable or would fit Brian the most? And in your journey, how do you strike a balance between what Brian feels comfortable versus Brian's developmental need to kind of stretch himself a little bit to go beyond the comfort zone? So how do you strike that delicate balance as well?
Practically, I also look at the ranking as well. That's one of the index to think about, okay, if this is a good school, or this is challenging enough, or this is just comfortable. So we have a target of the range of the school Brian should go to based on the reputation and based on basically how the school academic look like. That's one. And secondly, we also look at how over-rounded, because Brian also do sports as well. We want to look at if the school are balanced between academic and sports and maybe community service and even location as well. I think the location is a practical things, how the school kind of convenience, right? We are international kids. The school convenience, the travel distance, including the weather, okay? We value this, but it's also important if it's going to be like 7 months of the snow every year as well. So we look at several criteria. It can be as long as the 10 items of the criteria, then we prioritize what's most important for Brian. So then for our situation, every family is different again. For our situation, again, the school reputation, if that's for a good manner, a well-educated, can turn him to a better person. That's very important as one. Basically, the value system, how the school value look like. Then number two is school culture. School culture, as I mentioned before, I want the school which is very welcoming and very warm and can make him feel like at home as well. So with that, we chose the middle-sized school, like Episcopal High School, 400 plus kids, not like 1,000 kids, which are very different stories. The boarding rate is very important for us. Also, because of the boarding rate, we gave up one school, which is also very well reputed, academically especially, but the boarding rate is much lower. We chose this 100% boarding school due to we think that will give a more complete border experience from Monday to Sunday. Certainly, I also do a little bit due diligence as well. We trust our counselor. We also ask around the people who we got to know. Actually, I got to know quite some parents because we want to do that, the whole boarding school experience. So I talk to people, understand how their perspective is. I always believe I listen and just give me different perspective. Then based on perspective, just prioritize what's important for your choices and make choices. So the kind of like due diligence also give me some confidence the school should be a good choice, so we just go for it.
Thank you for your sharing. Would you please describe the application process now that the family has decided to apply? There's a couple of months of very intense preparation, right? So what were some of his joys and pains? And most importantly, how did you see Brian change throughout that preparation stage?
I would summarize first into a few words. First is a lot of work. Number one, the application process. Number two, I see it's really worthwhile because I see how different Brian behaves and Brian turn into before and after. The whole process I think for our case, it took more than a year. We started like November 2021 and we concluded in March 2023. So like a year and a half. So the application process includes a standard test. Brian is an international student. His time in Singapore not long enough, so he need to do the TOEFL. So prepare the TOEFL was the first step because that can give us more time to do the other priorities later. So he started his TOEFL test in grade 6 and he did get a good result. So at least we think it's a good result. He got 110 for TOEFL. Then from the time we started to apply the boarding school, we focus on number one, prepare himself. It's kind of systematic work. It's not only about the standard test. It's really about who you are as a person and how does your profile look like, what's your stories, and why you really want. Okay, let's be also realistic. They are 13 years old kids. So a lot of time, I think they don't really know what they want. So it's important. I feel like those life coaching Uncle Daniel gave Brian is very important to help them think. That's teenage, right? Maybe many mothers who watching this video will see there's a tension naturally between the parents and the teenage during this time. We also have as well. So in addition to hire the counselor, I also trying to find some mentor, which are the elder boy examples I think Brian will benefit from. So I also use my network and resource trying to find some elder boy who are in college in US now, trying to share the experience with Brian. Normally kids listen others much more than listen parents. So I do feel those helpful as well. So during the application process, Brian also needs to do a lot of activities. There are a lot of moments is not comfortable. For example, leadership roles. Brian is a little introvert and he wants to see he's confident about it to make it good before he really just to try and what if he embarrass himself. So that's about the risk taking as well. But however, the clock is clicking, so we don't have all the time for you just to wait and to grow 1 year older. So he has been pushed by Uncle Daniel, by myself to take some leadership roles, do some activities in school clubs, which he was certainly not comfortable about. But that's also a growth period. I see that he gradually I can actually do that. It's not that difficult or it's not that uncomfortable. So that gave him confidence. Plus the school activities, we also need to do the community service. I really value that piece. That piece really bring the kids kind of close to the real world. We do for the kind of low income people's community service. We also Brian also helped some a little disabled people to learn the arts and the other areas as well. Like he also working in the kitchen to prepare the food for the families who need support. So those also the moments help him to really feel like, okay, what he can help and help him to feel like more, okay, what kind of person he wants to be as well. Okay, he again still put into a lens that he's only 13, 14, but I do see a lot of growth.
This most precious. I mean, the application process itself is about applying, to schools, right? And getting into school is the natural reward, for that process. But I think a lot of parents, they may not be aware that, actually even richer reward lies not necessarily in the outcome of the process, but in the journey of the process, in seeing how the son or the daughter grows through that process of preparing themselves for that application. So thank you for sharing. Thank you. Now, every application would need to have a critical component called interview. And there are 3 modes of interview. You can do it online, like, over Zoom. You can do it if the school officer visits the local hometown, so you can, conduct the interview face-to-face with that officer, maybe at a hotel setting. And there's the third one, which is the family would, take the trip, to go over to the campus and do the interview on campus. And along with that, there will also be a campus visit, a campus tour as well. You have gone through all three, and you have witnessed, how Brian, did in all three modes. Which one would you recommend to our viewers out here if they were to consider picking among these three choices?
I would certainly recommend family invest time to visit campus and do the interview. Partially, it's not only about the interview, it's also another round of experience you can get to understand how the school and feel how all the admission people also behave differently. So you can also feel like if that's something you feel comfortable to, hand over your kids to, that's one. And also, it's giving you different feelings. I think the kids also will be more further tested in a real environment versus in a hotel in Singapore or virtually. So I would definitely suggest that. Also, one more thing I want to say is for the parents, it's an important and a very good bonding experience. When you travel all the world to do the campus and to interview, it's the bonding. I remember Brian, I try to take the photo with Brian after every interviews, and we love those experiences. We had a great time actually during our school interview this winter.
Again, of course, the objective of the trip would be to conduct the interviews, but a lot of times it's really the precious moments of bonding along the journey, like on the road trip, in the car, in the van, and taking pictures together and having, dinners together and preparing, for the next stop, for the next school. Those are the memorable experiences. Those are the precious memories.
And the reflections, both we can do. I mean, that's also the dialogue. It's good to have with child, right? How do you reflect? How do you see this kind of interview? How do you assess yourself? And as a parent, we will also have chance to talk to the school admission as well. So also can comparing notes. That's a chance for you to understand how you see your child perception on things. So I do feel like there's a growth moment together.
Yes, sometimes the way I look at it is a lot of times I witness my students would grow more in that 1 week journey of doing the campus visits and doing the interviews on campus. They would grow more in that 1 week than maybe the previous 6 months combined. That, of course, that 1 week is very intense. It's not just physical demands, jet lag, and you have to go from place to place. You're tired, you're exhausted, but it's the mental stress, because this is like the climax of everything that you had done in previous 6, 12, 18 months. It's all on this week. And so it's tremendous pressure, but it's also through, seeing and observing how the student would move from Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, school by school, and see how they grow. For me, that is one of the most joyful or satisfying part of my job, is to see how they grow. Just to echo with what Mommy just said.
Yeah, I want to also say that actually it's a real process. As 13, 14 years, there's a process. It's not all the time very smooth. One thing I value a lot is there's up and downs in the application process. And Brian will also see how he behave, how he work will also bring the different results, including consequence. I remember so clearly, we have a weekly and bi-weekly kind of like conversation with counselors. There's one Friday night. I think that was also the time Brian and I have different opinion, because I think he can work harder and he feel like it's fine. So, but in that conversation with our counselor, he got the perception based on his current result, current performance, everything, maybe top 50 US boarding school will be more achievable. That was a shock for him, because he see himself differently from that assessment. I remember so clearly, that was the late night, so he and I in the living room, we have conversation. He feel bad, and I see that promote a good change for him to work harder. And I really think those kind of moments just also help him and help kids to grow, to understand you must work hard enough, and that always pay back. If you are not, that's also give you consequence. So that was one dialogue I remember so clearly.
Sometimes a little bit of a reality check and a shock therapy can do the trick.
Yes, indeed. So it's important. You need to have counselor or people who really can be very direct, tell the truth to you and your children's face. They need to hear that. They need to hear the real feedback, and they need to hear what they should do differently as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your sharing again. If we were to move to your next question about how you made the final decision to enroll Brian into Episcopal High School, what were the factors that your family was collectively considering?
Okay, I think first it starts from the target school you want to apply. We have a range of the target school, which we visit most of that and have a preference and rank them as well during the visiting based on, the key elements I mentioned before. Then you have your kind of preferred first tier of the school you really want to get into. Then Brian and I, we need to do our best to see how many offers we can get. So we got several offers, a handful of that choices. Then back to the criteria, which is really important to you. It's about the prioritization. So for us, the prioritization comes number one to what's the suitable, what fits to you. I talked earlier about the school value, the school size, and the overall school reputation of the balance of academic and activities as well. We chose Episcopal High School also due to the location. We think is a good location. That school is 15 minutes away from Washington, D.C. The school have a program called DC program, which kind of bring the kids also to the real world, not only because of the resources in DC, but some internship program possibly to provide to junior and senior kids as well. And also, Episcopal High School has 100% boarding rate, which we feel pretty important to give him a full experience. Because we have one school out of our list, like only have 35 boarding rate, which also produce like Sunday you don't have the library or you don't have people around you or activities, so which very different. And EHS also, I talked to EHS parents as well, make me feel like it's really like a big family. People seems very nice to each other, wants to support each other. That may give me some comfort, like my son will be supported in this environment as well. So multiple reasons, but again, every family is different. For us, we feel like this could be a good environment for him to grow in the next 4 years.
Indeed. Now, if we were to ponder back this entire process over the past 18 months, if you could do it all over again, what one thing would you have done differently, if there's any such one thing?
It's always a very good question. If you ask Brian, I think Brian will think about he probably can work harder at the beginning and get a better GPA. I think that we see that also caused some of the probably the challenges due to some of the application he also aimed to be, but the GPA might not be as excellent as it could be if he worked harder. That's from his experience perspective. So from my reflection, I do think maybe it's better to give him, more activities as well to test his passion. For example, during the application process, also due to the family influence as well, my husband influenced him about the music as well. So he found his passion to do drumming. That was totally pick up during the application process. It's not because we need to apply, but because we need to apply, we need to find out more activities. Then he found out the music is his passion and he liked that. So I just feel like the application process is not objective. The more is it could be a trigger, a motivation for you to explore more. So it's good to explore more because that helps your child find what he is really truly passionate about. I see how music play an important role in Brian's application process and now in his life. when he is stressful, when he is happy, and when he is happy, they listen to music. And also it's a bonding between my husband and him as a thing to do. So I think that's not directly contributed by the US boarding school, but it's a trigger. And I would think, yes, we do more exploration, help kids to find out what's really passionate about. It's always a good thing to have in life.
Would you give an advice, or what one advice would you like to give to our viewers out there currently considering whether boarding education is the right thing to do for their child?
I could write down a lot. I think if one thing we need to do, I do really strongly recommend to first trust your kids and bring them to school to make them feel what's suitable. That's to find out what's suitable is an exploration process you and your child will do together. Don't just trust the ranking. Ranking is just one way to look at things, and somehow it's also influenced by different commercial elements. It's more important you go there to visit, to talk to people, to walk around, to observe, and listen to your child. Let your child to observe, because this is his or her life in the next 4 years. So don't hesitate to make that investment from the time and the financial perspective. I really think it's very important, because that's also the only way for you to know if this is something suitable or it's going to be a challenge. So plus the summer school experience is part of the overall, I think, talk about to invest, to explore on site.
Thank you so much, Tina, for your most precious sharing today. I would like to first and foremost wish Brian all the very best, an amazing 4 years ahead, and I would love to stay in touch with your family. Thank you so much once again, Tina, for coming in our midst today.
Thank you, Uncle Daniel, and it's our pleasure, and hopefully our experience can add some value and share with the families who is looking for the same experience. So yes, it's all experience we want to invest, and we want our kids to be a better self as a parent.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Thank you again. To all viewers out there, if you have enjoyed what we shared today and would like to learn more from us, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on everything boarding school. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, happy boarding school hunting.